Okay, so we've covered with this disease aspect the disease traveling inland very quickly, the narrow immunization spectrum causing the disease to be so widespread, and the reports going back to Europe, inaccurate reports of these cultures, which we're still living with in some ways today. Now, Charles Mann, who we owe a great debt of gratitude for his 2005 work called 1491, his name is Charles Mann, he outlined what he called Holmberg's mistake. He covers this exact subject, and he referred to it as Holmberg's mistake. And Holmberg was actually in the 20th century. Now, this situation we're describing of these inaccurate reports going back to Europe and giving false ideas and misconceptions that then get entrenched and carry on, this was in the 1500s, 1600s, 1700s, 1800s, and 1900s, and right up to today. But in this particular case, it was in the middle of the 20th century. Now, Holmberg spent close to 20 years with the Soriano people, and he traveled with them. They were in South America, and he reported on these people. Now, he was an anthropologist. He was very committed to his work, very devoted to his work, and very devoted to these people who he lived with and traveled with for close to 20 years. He got to know them very, very well. And yet, all that time, he was deceived. He didn't realize that what he was witnessing was this example of depopulation. They, in fact, had been wiped out to 5% of their population not long before. And they had that Stone Age kind of effect. Now, as an anthropologist, and anthropologists aren't known to head out on their own in terms of ideas. They want the things that they're reporting on to fit into existing frameworks of thought. And that's been well proven over the last 30, 40 years that that's what's happened over the 200 or 300 years. So as an anthropologist, he wasn't looking anywhere other than that here's these tribes people that are living in a sort of a Stone Age atmosphere. So this was called Holmberg's mistake. Now, all the centuries had this. So the disease list is quite extensive. The bubonic plague, tetanus, typhoid, malaria, yellow fever, measles, mumps, encephalitis, tuberculosis, smallpox, influenza, whooping cough, dysentery, cholera, typhus, diphtheria, scarlet fever, pleurisy, venereal disease, the common cold, rabies, and goiter. Any of these diseases could cause an epidemic, which could wipe out hundreds of thousands of people, or certainly thousands of people. They could all be deadly, any one of these diseases. Now, we want to make sure we mention that they were disease-free in the Western Hemisphere. They didn't have any of these diseases. And yes, syphilis is always trotted out as the one. That's been debunked true, even as well. Even syphilis was not something that the Western Hemisphere indigenous gave to the Europeans. It was also the other way around. In fact, they helped to find some cures for syphilis. So the Stone Age tribespeople fallacies, they carry on today. We've looked into a few of the reasons behind that.